What's up, guys? Coach John here. Question today is it good for everybody to have a high-fat ketogenic diet? The answer is, it depends. John Shane here again, functional nutritional therapy practitioner specializing in metabolic health and endurance performance. Super excited to talk about this conversation, or have this conversation rather, because I feel like high-fat is extremely popular in some spaces, and it's extremely not popular in other spaces. There's a lot of back and forth on it, so I kind of want to clear the air with my own subjective opinion through observation, through education, and through anecdotal evidence. Okay, so what is a higher fat ketogenic diet? A higher fat ketogenic diet is a standard model of a strict ketogenic diet or higher, meaning a strict ketogenic diet, you're looking for 75% fat, 20% protein, 5% carbohydrates. So 75% fat or higher is considered a higher fat ketogenic diet. 75%, 80%, 85%. Now you're getting to therapeutic ketosis, things like that, okay? So the argument is, which one is better? That's kind of where the tension lies. And I am definitely in the firm camp of it really depends. And let me explain. Everybody responds to high fat differently. So what I want to do is I want to go through the pros and the cons of a higher fat ketogenic diet, okay? Pros. A higher fat ketogenic diet can be very good for inducing fat adaptation, right? Meaning if you have very low protein intake, extremely low carb intake, and you're eating a lot of dietary fat, the chances of you getting a ketosis, especially at first when you've never done a ketogenic diet, and then being saturated with fatty acids and ketones to help your body kind of force it in a way to become efficient at using those fatty acids like it used to be when you were young and a kid and all that, much higher. The chances of that happening faster and more efficiently is much higher, right? Which is going to help you become fat adapted. It's going to help you feel better quicker. It's going to help your body use fatty acids more efficiently. It's going to help lower inflammation quicker. It's going to help with insulin sensitivity more. It's very beneficial, especially for creating a healthy environment for a ketogenic diet when you first start. So that's kind of like the pro in terms of exposure to a ketogenic diet. A higher fat, strict ketogenic diet can be really good if you've never done keto. If I get a client that's never done keto ever, I generally start them 70 to 75% fat because I want them to get used to using fat. And it can be a big adjustment, but that is one of the pros of a higher fat ketogenic diet. Another pro is muscle preservation, right? I have friends that do bodybuilding on a strict ketogenic diet, and I bring up bodybuilding in particular because when you're dieting down, one of the issues with dieting down for a bodybuilding show, especially when you're natural and not using substances, enhanced substances, is that you muscle waste. Your body starts to break down muscle to deal with the lack of nutrients, and so therefore you lose some of the gains that you've had during the off season. With the ketogenic diet, ketones are very anti-catabolic. So catabolic is a term that we use to reference the breaking down of things. So you have anabolic, which is building, and you have catabolic, which is breaking down. Ketones are very anti-catabolic, meaning when your body has a lot of ketones in it, or it's using a lot of ketones, it creates a lot of ATP, which is basically the energy substance of your body. Therefore, it doesn't really go after protein as much. I know a lot of people that do a ketogenic approach, carnivorous approach, in their bodybuilding prep, and they tend to preserve most, if not all, of the muscle mass during their gaining phase. Now, whether they carb up or something before the show, that's dependent on the person's personal preference. But during the actual dieting phase, doing a strict ketogenic diet, adhering to that, can really help with preserving muscle. So we know that a ketogenic diet, if you're trying to preserve muscle while you're dieting, ketogenic diet can be very, very good for that, okay? And then thirdly, higher fats, obviously better for brain health, overall body health, more ketones. So if you're someone that suffers with autoimmune issue, headaches, whatever, a higher fat approach can be good for those kinds of things, especially when you're first dealing with an autoimmune issue that has been quite rampant because of a standard American diet, bad toxic environmental exposure, things like that. So that would be like the pros of a ketogenic diet, okay? Then we get into the possible negatives of a higher fat ketogenic diet. The first one is just body sensitivity. So a lot of people, and this can be due to ancestral issues, ancestral differences rather, is that their gallbladders just can't handle that much fat. Like the amount of calories they need to maintain their body weight and feel normal in the form of fat can be really hard on their gallbladders. Now, some people will argue, well, then just take bile salts. But my argument is that if they genetically can't handle that, we shouldn't be adding supplementation to make them handle that, because that's unnatural, right? I'm all for supplementation. I literally own a supplement company. There's a difference between taking supplements to enhance your body, and there's the using supplements to change your body, to make it do something that it's not supposed to do, right? So if there's people due to genetic reasons, ancestral differences, that can't handle 75% fat because their gallbladders don't want to deal with that much fat, there's nothing wrong with doing lower fat. There's nothing wrong with taking your fat down a notch, going to 65, 60, even 50%. I've had to do with some clients. That's okay. That's okay. You may not come from a place where your ancestors needed to eat pounds of blubber in order to survive. Therefore, your gallbladder doesn't excrete that much bile, right? That's okay. It's okay. And obviously, we get into gallbladder removed ketogenic diets and things like that, where that's different, right? Your gallbladder's removed, so you need to take something to help with fat assimilation anyways. That's where bile salts can be really handy. But I just think that there's murky water there where we're so focused on a certain definition of a dietary approach that we're saying, okay, well, if that's not working for your body because your body doesn't like it, let's force it to like it by adding in supplementation. I think that there's that's murky water that we can get into just to try and force somebody to do a dietary approach that we really like. So that's one of the negatives, is body sensitivity to that much fat. Another one is lack of protein. People that eat 75 to 80% fat, to be able to get enough protein in to sustain muscle growth, protein synthesis, all these things, they have to eat so many calories. And the problem with that is, I know people don't like to hear this, but if you eat 5,000 calories, the average human is going to gain body fat, even on a carnivore diet. Now, some people can. Some people will listen to this and go, well, I eat 4,000 calories and I don't lose weight, or I don't gain weight, or whatever. Okay, cool. That's you, bro. It's you. You might even know 10 people that do that. 10 people is a very small percentage. It's less than 0.001% of the entire world population. This still doesn't make it good for the masses. So if you're someone that, in order to eat enough protein on a ketogenic diet, you put on body fat, eating that many calories while keeping your fat high, it's okay to lower your fat, especially after the first couple weeks, right? I have 3 phases of keto. I've gone over it in another video. I'll put the link up here to the first phase. It's good to have like a fat adaptation phase per se, but after a couple weeks, if you want to lower that fat to bring that protein up to start building muscle mass, you are more than capable and allowed to do that. So negative number 2 is they're just not building enough protein, or they're not getting enough protein in to build muscle. And that brings me to number 3. They're not getting in enough calories to deal with thyroid production and overall hormone balance. So there are also other people that, in order to have a healthy thyroid function and a healthy sex hormone function, it goes back to point number 2. The amount of calories of fat they would need to eat to do that put on unnecessary adipose tissue. And so they would do much better after becoming fat adapted of jumping after phase 2 to phase 3 of the ketogenic diet that I have, where they start to cycle in carbs. Carbs, due to their relationship with insulin, can show positive impact on T4 to T3 conversion in the liver, as well as cortisol suppression, which can help with sex hormone production and overall balance. And so that's the argument there, is like, okay, well, is it better for me to have 4,000 calories a day with fat and protein, or 30,000 calories with 100 grams of carbohydrates, so a little bit higher carb than a ketogenic diet, but not obnoxious, and then the rest, and then my body weight in protein, and then the rest in fat? Like, which better for me? And I would argue that the one that doesn't make you put on unnecessary adipose tissue. Now, some people will argue, well, if you have to put on that body fat, that's your body's norm anyways. But I think there's a logical fallacy there, because that statement is built upon the idea that carbs are not good under any circumstance. Therefore, if you have to eat a certain amount of fat to balance hormones and health, and you eat that and you gain weight, then you were meant to do that simply because they don't want to admit that carbs may be good if it keeps you at a healthier adipose tissue level. So I think that that's what you have to fight through there. But that is one of those negatives. So again, I hope that gives you some clarity on whether you should be doing a high-fat diet or not. I appreciate you. I love you. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like the channel. Till next time.